Welcome to Therapy Unplugged, the podcast where two therapists offer insights to the real-life issues we all experience. We are your hosts, Sarah Benoit and Megan McCullough.
Welcome back, listeners. It's Megan here with Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
How are you?
I am doing well. How about you?
I'm well, thank you.
So we are back again, and in our last episode, we had explored the idea of toxic productivity.
Mhm.
And we had defined it as this kind of constant focus to do or to produce with little to no balance of rest, of play, of creating. And so in today's episode, we thought we would follow up by exploring this idea of play and creativity for adults. And we'll talk about why it's important, what its benefits are. And of course, we'll also give you some ideas on how to implement more fun, more play, uh, just more non doing into your life. So, how do you feel about today's episode?
I'm excited about this. I think it's interesting because, pardon me, I think we think of play and just the word play relative to kids
Yes.
or to things like sports or a game but it's actually kind of funny because I was thinking, I'm like, what would be a different word for play
Mhm.
that some adults, because I think the more analytical
Mm.
people sometimes struggle with this.
Yeah, so another word that they might resonate with better. Okay.
Right,
Did you come
right.
up with anything?
Well, so this is what was kind of funny because there's so many synonyms out there, but where I struggled was I they would relate to, or at least in my mind when I read some of these, and of course now that we're talking about it, I can't think of what I saw, but they somehow tied to productivity. They tied
Mm.
to accomplishment or competitiveness or I mean, I literally had to go through like 1,000 words, and I thought, well, nothing
Oh,
fits,
interesting.
because it was something like one I do remember, relaxation was in there.
Yep. Yep.
I totally agree with that, but I think that for someone who is in that toxic productivity mode, I don't think they can necessarily resonate with that. Like, I think intellectually, sure, but put
Right.
it into practice.
Yep.
So, it was somewhat frustrating because I think in my mind, I was hoping something's just gonna jump out at you, Sarah.
Pop. Yeah.
Yep, and nothing popped.
But it's cool that you did that and you went through that and tried to find another word, and maybe that speaks to how far away we as adults have gotten from this idea of play, right?
Mhm.
Because maybe what if that just is the way to look at it, and we need to start kind of thinking outside the box perhaps on what that can mean for us.
Right, right. Well, and I don't know about you, but even because I tend to lean towards the analytical side,
Mhm.
but even in preparing for this, I kept thinking about, so what is this gonna be like for the listener who has a hard time wrapping their brain around
Mhm.
fun or play or
Mhm.
downtime or however you wanna
Mhm.
look at it? And I thought about, it's very much a mindset too,
Mhm.
because if you're a doer, much like that example that I gave about running at lunch
Mhm.
in our last episode, okay, well, is that playful? I mean, going for a jog is not necessarily playful if you hate it.
Right.
Now, if you're running around with, your kid or your niece or your nephew or your animal and you're playing a game, now that's fun.
Right. Right. Right, and that makes me think about maybe this, definition of play for adults. I mean, to some degree, I think you there needs to be a connection to some sort of joy with it, right?
Mhm.
Because again, if you're running at lunch and you hate running, that's not going to promote any kind of feeling of joy. But if you're running in the yard with your kids with a squirt gun and you're laughing,
Mhm.
um, right, like there's hopefully there's going to be some sort of sense of uplift.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting, and I do have, and I'll save it for the end, but you mentioned for some of our listeners, this may be a really hard concept to grasp. I did come up this morning with two ideas of how to even just start to generate some ideas of what play might look like
Mhm.
for those that are really kind of struggling. Like I have no idea. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So Sarah, I think this is going to be an interesting episode for me because in thinking about creativity and play, um, I think in some ways I'm pretty good at non-doing. I've gotten pretty good at not filling my schedule up to the brim.
Mhm.
Yet the interesting thing is that, oftentimes, especially like by the end of the work week, I can feel pretty exhausted at times. And it's interesting to me, right? Like I'm really looking forward to exploring this more because as much as I may think I'm good at kind of chilling out, I think there are absolutely areas where I I need to better practice what I preach.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I can share that. I mean, I know that, and when we're not there yet, but when we get into the idea of what play might look like for some people, that was one of the ways I approached it, was thinking, "Okay, what do I do?" And I kind of listed them out, and I did it just for what you're saying, is because I was thinking there's definitely ways that I can expand that. And even looking at the things that I do find a lot of fun or I get a lot of joy in, am I incorporating that enough?
Right. Yes, exactly. So, I think what we're both kind of agreeing on here is that there's, especially as we get older, there's no one definition, right, of
Mhm.
what play means. I grew up in the 70s, and when I think back to being a child, uh I grew up in the middle of the woods on 20 acres, and those 20 acres of woods, that was literally my playground.
Mm.
And, I absolutely loved to explore them. I had a pretty vivid imagination. I felt free, right? Like, I
Mhm.
felt free when I was out there, um, kind of unburdened by any kind of task. Uh, and so for me, and this is just me, right? This is not something I researched or anything like that, but what I had come up with is that my definition of play would be something that allows me to feel, whether it's joy, peace, even just contentment, right?
Mhm.
Um, without the desire for an outcome of some sort of accomplishment, without desire for an outcome of producing something, and without expecting an outcome of some sort of high level of quality or perfection in whatever it was I was engaging in.
Mhm.
doing or being just for the sake of doing or being. So
Mm.
that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
I like that, and I think the part, is as you were speaking, I mean, I hadn't sat down and actually kind of attached my own definition, but
Mhm,
as you're expressing this, when I think of play or fun or joy, I think a couple things happen for me, and it's intrinsic, it's not like I'm searching it out,
mhm.
but I feel lighter.
Yes.
I feel maybe more carefree. I'm generally laughing.
Yeah.
And if at the very least, if I'm not laughing, I'm certainly smiling. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and it's that my brain has space. There's space in there.
Mm.
It's not congested like a traffic jam with, okay, what do I have to do next? Or, is this okay? Like, did I do a good job on that? It's just actually truly being in the moment.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Does it make sense? Is this a good transition to maybe talk more about just some of the other benefits that
I think so.
play can okay. Do you wanna
Yeah.
start that?
Sure. I think I did make a list about this, and I'm guessing I think you could probably chunk it down, and, I mean, I certainly didn't when I wrote this out for my own notes, but I think there's a lot of different ways that this benefits us. I think play benefits our mental health, our physical health, um, just, things like our social well-being. I think there's a lot we can, and not that this is the goal, I think this is maybe the secondary gain, is there's a lot we can learn.
Mhm,
And when I say that, I think about things like, let's take maybe the social aspect, if you will. Um, it's known, or it's certainly it's being talked about a lot more now, that one of the quote unquote secrets to longevity, yes, it's taking care of your body, but it's the social aspect. It's being
mhm,
connected.
mhm, mhm,
And I think when we're connected and we're laughing with people and we're having fun, it teaches us how to reciprocate in a relationship. It teaches us how to communicate, how to trust, how to,
mhm,
use our empathy and, all those types of things. But the best part about it is you're not thinking about it. It's not a
mhm.
calculated effort. It's just happening.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's like, I think, what was just coming to me is, yeah, it's a shared experience. Shared experience with people that you really care about is amazing, and then on top of that, if it's a shared experience that is just what you said, right? It's organic, it's in the moment, it's just bringing you a sense of joy, it's your maybe it's a burst of laughter, right? It's just this moment when you can really connect, I think, with the other person at that higher level when you're not plagued with the to-do list.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And when we think about that, when that's happening, you're releasing endorphins. So
Yes.
that is you're feeling better. And I think there's, and again, I don't think that people necessarily, and I don't think we should necessarily think about as we enter into something, playful or fun. It's okay, this is going to release endorphins and I'm going to feel better and I'm going to be less stressed. But I think if you are looking at incorporating this more into your life, if you don't have enough of it, this might be helpful for people to understand, like, okay, how is this going to benefit me? Because again, if I'm in that, well, I really should be doing X, Y, or Z, it's like, okay, but are you going to actually maybe get a greater bang for your buck
Mhm.
going out and doing something fun?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, a couple more that I also had on my list, is I think that there's, cognitive benefits too that
Mhm.
can you can really see when we make space, right, in our brains for rest and for play. And I had written on I'm looking at my notes right now, and I had written, especially in problem solving skills, and I think that whether we're trying to solve a problem or whether, um even if we're working, um, the irony, I think, is that if we get enough play and rest in our life, it can actually increase our productivity
Right,
at
right.
work or at home, getting tasks or chores done. We can come up with solutions maybe quicker than we would if we were just always, always, always on the go.
Mhm.
So that's kind of one of the kind of ironic benefits, right, of the rest and play. It actually can help with your productivity.
And I'm glad you mentioned rest because we hadn't incorporated that yet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Excuse me, and I think, it's interesting, one of, and my colleagues that I used to share office space with, she would take a nap every
Mhm.
day for, like, 20
Mhm.
minutes, and I
Mhm.
would be so jealous because, 1, I don't fall asleep that fast,
Mm.
and if I do take a nap in the middle of the day like that, I generally don't feel physically well after, but I mean, it would amaze me in how it would reframe her, how it
Mm.
would refresh her,
Yep.
and I will say, I mean, maybe I can't nap that great during the day, however, if my brain is really full or, again, that problem-solving thing, and I know we say this to people and it sounds cliché, but sleep on it. That idea of rest is so powerful,
Oh, yeah.
and it really can, I mean, 1, it's necessary and important, but it really can clear our minds that and give us a fresh perspective, and it gives us that space or that distance to be able to approach something and maybe have the pieces fall into place.
Mhm. 100%. It literally is a reset.
Mhm.
And it we undervalue sleep just
Yes.
far too much, at least in our society. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. I think one thing you mentioned too around that problem solving, and I think this is purely independent of, who you are and what you like to do. But I think, and there's that idea out there of like kind of playing brain games, especially as
Mhm.
you get older.
Yes.
But the other part I think that is important is memory. And I, whatever we have to do to kind of, and this is my opinion, keeping our memory intact. But again, I think having incorporating that rest and that fun or that play. And I know especially with the rest, like I see this with a lot of clients where that is one of my top questions is, how is your sleep?
Mm.
Because
Yep.
if you've got anxiety and you're not getting enough sleep, 9 out of 10 times the anxiety is even more pronounced and the clarity has decreased if you're not getting enough sleep. Um,
Right.
Emotions tend to run higher. There's so much that goes with that, and not only just the mental part of it, but I mean, physically, we need that restoration.
100%. And I have a feeling sleep is probably going to be a topic we discuss more in our next
Mm,
episode as well.
yes.
Yeah. Yep. One other, I think you already mentioned this to a degree, but it's probably worthy of mentioning again. Another benefit um, of play is enhanced, just mindfulness or enhanced presence, or another way of saying it, and you did say this, was just being in the moment, right?
Mm,
We tend, I would hope, if you're really engaged in activity just for the joy of it, um, you're not thinking about other things. And this idea of practicing more presence in our lives is also incredibly valuable. So I see a connection there too.
Yes, for sure.
Is there anything else you wanna mention, about just the benefits that we see?
I think, uh, the only one I would add, and it's kind of a two-pronged approach, but this lends more to the physical side of play, where I think, again, and this is maybe an unintended benefit, so, for example, if you're out like, if you're going canoeing or if you're hiking, I mean, yes, you're doing it because maybe you like being outside, you like the attachment to nature, but you're increasing things maybe like your strength or your
Mhm.
balance, and again, bigger picture, this has the potential to reduce chronic disease. And,
Yes.
and when we think of stress, I mean, that's related to chronic disease. We think of inactivity. There's so many things. So I think, again, maybe for the person who has a hard time wrapping their head around it, looking at the much bigger picture and
Mhm.
saying, okay, what is within my control? And if I'm going to be doing things, why don't I do them and have fun at the same time and really have fun, not just check the
Right.
box.
Right, exactly. I love that.
Would Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask you if it makes sense to, I know in your research you had brought up, someone who had identified these, different play personalities, and I was
Mhm.
thinking just that might also help listeners who are really kind of in the dark about, "I don't even know where to start." But you tell me if that sounds like a good place for us to go right
That
now.
was exactly what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
okay, okay. Go for it.
Um, so, there and some listeners may be familiar, but there is someone out there named Dr. Stuart Brown, and he is a researcher, and he founded the National Institute of Play, and what I thought was pretty cool is that he has identified 8 play personalities. So, I think this is really important for that person who maybe needs to take that more kind of what I would call a serious approach to, okay, what does this look like for me? And especially if I think sometimes it's hard again for people to wrap around like, well, what does this mean? How is X play? So the first one that he outlines is called the collector. And I can tell you when I read this, I was like, a collector? That's play?
Mhm, mhm,
Because it's about building collections.
mhm.
Well, my father is a collector,
Yeah.
and so much I mean, and it's really interesting because I know that this relaxes him. I know that he enjoys this. This is fun for him. Um, and that fun could be the adventure of, okay, we're driving 4 hours to go pick up this antique tractor, or
Mhm, mhm,
where this guy has a part for this thing that I'm refurbishing. And I know that especially as a kid, I probably didn't look at it as, like I do now, but
mhm.
having that lens, and when you think about, yes, he spends an awful lot of time doing this, but he gets so much joy
Right.
from doing this. And so just to kind of I'll just throw all the play personalities out there.
Okay.
Um, and I want listeners, if you can, if you're having a hard time thinking about like, well, where would I start?
Mhm.
As I'm going through this, you might find that, oh, that I fit in there, or that resonates with me here, or I've never thought of that, and I might want to try this.
Right.
So, in addition to the collector, he's got the competitor. And think about the competitor, and not necessarily like cutthroat competition necessarily, but they enjoy playing games. They enjoy
Mhm.
games that have rules. So whether that's a pickup game of basketball, a card
Mhm.
game, having that family night where it's game night,
Mm.
things like that.
Got it.
The artist slash creator. So I think when people think of artist, oh, I need to know how to draw or paint. Um, no, it's the creator. It's if maybe painting is a medium, maybe creating some pottery, maybe maybe writing a poem or journaling or a short story, or writing something, for your local newspaper that
Creating a podcast.
creating a exactly, exactly. And thank you
Yeah.
for saying that because I will tell you when I was writing this, I was like, "Oh, yeah, we that is." I think I mentioned last time, I don't view this as work.
Right.
This is fun, and it's
Right.
creative, and this is something that I don't get to sit with my clients. I mean, yes, I talk to them, obviously, but it's a
Mhm.
lot different.
Yes.
So, yeah, exactly. I mean, whatever is in that artist creator resonates.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, the another one, the director, and this is about planning or hosting. So, if you're that person who loves having people at the house and
Mhm.
having a dinner party or an afternoon barbecue or just having people come over and having like a themed, you know, luncheon, um, the explorer, discovering something new, going out there and trying new things, going new places.
Yeah.
The joker, being silly and foolish. And I think this is a fun one because
Mhm.
I think I can say personally, like, I can be the joker, like, I can be silly, but I have to be comfortable. So I'm not
Mhm.
that person that's just gonna go be silly in front of 1,000 people.
Right. Right. Got it.
Now I'm gonna butcher this word because it's the kinesthetic person,
Mhm.
but it's about moving your body.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the storyteller. So listening or creating stories. So those are those are his 8 play personalities, and if it helps listeners, if it helps you to say, "Okay, where do I wanna pull from, to start maybe my play or my rest journey?"
Mhm.
And I say rest because I think some of these things can be like, when I think of creating a story, um that could mean a lot of things for me personally. I could be writing, or I
Mhm.
could also be almost in a meditative state thinking about, okay, what do I want to include in this? Or what is
Mhm.
coming up for
Mhm.
me that I really want to create?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I really love that you broke these down because as you were doing so, I had all these kind of little mini aha moments both about myself and also, like, people I know well.
Mhm.
And one thing that's coming up for me, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but what's coming up for me is that, you know, don't think, listeners, that these categories are black and white and
Right.
you're because a lot of these could overlap. Like one so I'm thinking about my sister right now.
Mhm.
My sister is the most amazing kind of interior designer, right? Like she can just walk into a room and just know how to, whether it's just rearrange furniture or bring in a piece of art or whatever, just and make the space absolutely beautiful. And
Mhm.
without a doubt, that is one form for her of complete play and joy. Um, but also, so at the same time, uh, she also really loves like, she's good at planning events or hosting parties and things like that, and it's often connected to, how she makes the space beautiful. So,
Ah.
so the I would put so as I'm thinking about her, I guess if you were gonna break down the categories, those 2 things I just mentioned, the interior designer, I would put that in the artist creator category,
Mhm.
and then the planning or hosting is the director category, but they very much kind of, like, intertwined, right? So there's no black and white way that you need to look at this.
Exactly, and I also think what I was just thinking about as you were talking was, I think it's important to know where, and when I say this, I don't know if I'm gonna do it justice, but when I mean this is, like, to say what I'm trying to say, I can't speak, is know yourself and know where you fit and maybe don't
Mhm.
fit, because you
Right.
don't have to, there's, like you said, there's no black and white. For example, like you mentioned, the director, that is, I hate hosting.
Me too.
Absolutely. I hate it. And so I'm not gonna try to fit myself in that box, because
Right.
it isn't gonna be fun. I'm not gonna
Yep.
get joy from it. It's gonna stress me out, and that's okay. And I think the other part too here is that if you were to look at these different personalities, I think there's also um I can't think of the right word. It's not balance, but there's an element of extrovert and introvert in here too.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
kind of interesting where I definitely fall maybe more in the introvert, in the
Mhm.
sense of, like, I fit into the creator, um, the kinesthetic person, the definitely the explorer, um, but I like I said, I'm not the director. I The storyteller, yes, but not in the sense that I wanna sit down necessarily and have a conversation. That is for me gonna be blended with the creator, where I'm gonna put that on paper.
Mm.
And it's interesting because 'cause I'm gonna be, this is an aside, but I had met up with some friends maybe a month and a half ago, and one of the things that I often wonder, because I'm a therapist, is when I think of my life pre-therapist, I was much more outgoing, I was much more social. Now I'm not. I'm much more, my time is my time, kind of leave me
Mhm.
alone.
Mhm.
And I'll be
Mhm.
curious after, whenever my retirement happens, if that happens, that if that will switch back, because
Ah,
I think part of it is I talk and I listen for a living,
yeah.
so that's that burnout place where it's like, "Oh, okay, leave me alone."
Yep.
But who knows, when I'm 80 years old,
Right.
I might be like, "Hey, everyone come on over."
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and you know what else is coming up for me is, it's so funny as you were talking about where you fit in these different categories. It you every single one, it's the same for me, and and the ones where we don't where you said you don't fit, like in the collector, you
Mhm.
don't fit in the director, um, you hadn't mentioned the competitor, and it makes me laugh because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, is that why we get along so well?" Because we're like, you just described all of the ones that I feel like I do resonate with, and then the ones that I don't.
Mm,
Um, what I wanna do personally with this list is pick one that I now it's not th I agree with you. If you absolutely hate it, don't do it. Like, if it
right.
sounds awful, don't do it. Like, collections sounds awful to me. I am constantly trying to get rid of things because I really am a minimalist. So the idea of, like, starting a collection is that does not sound fun for me.
Mhm.
But what about one where I'm realizing I'm lacking in it, but I know it actually does resonate with me. For example, I guess you could put this under either artist, creator, or storyteller, but I loved when I was younger and like as a child, adolescent, probably all through my 20s, honestly, probably up until the point when I became a parent, I loved writing. I
Mm,
wrote all the time. I wrote
mhm,
stories, I wrote in my journal, I was in writing groups, and, um, and I like to tell stories through writing just like you said you do, and I don't I honestly don't do that anymore.
mm,
Um, I think that the closest I come now, and it's different, but, I'm a hypnotherapist, and I love creating hypnotherapy scripts for
mhm.
clients. I really tailor them to exactly what they're coming in for, and even that, it sparks that creativity in me that really loves writing. So, um, I wanna take this list and really think about where can I really, like, try intentionally bring some of these categories back into my life. Another one for me, the Joker, I love laughing and I have a pretty dry sense of humor, but I don't am I getting enough of that just being silly?
Right.
Probably not.
Yes.
Probably not. So, that's one thing that I'm taking from this.
I love that. I think, and I don't know if this is a good transition to help our listeners kind of discover maybe, how to explore this idea of bringing more play into their lives.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so maybe we can just, right, go through some ideas, right,
Mhm.
that may resonate, may not.
Okay, sounds good. So, I was thinking, I mean, and again, I there's so many broad categories, but this is where I took the opportunity to say, okay, this is a challenge to see how much I personally am incorporating play into my life.
Yeah.
And the first one that came up is playing with the animals,
Mhm.
um, and partly because I mean, this sounds terrible. I have to, but my youngest dog is a working breed, so he needs exercise. He is an absolute
Mm.
bear if he doesn't get his exercise. So, I mean, I've not ever sat down and carved out, like, how many actual minutes a day I'm out there playing
Mhm,
Frisbee,
mhm.
um, but it's a lot, and I'm playing Frisbee in the dead of winter in a storm, and, sometimes in the rain,
Mhm.
um, and are there days that I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, "Oh, man, like, I don't wanna do this." Absolutely. But I will say when I am playing with my animals, I am laughing and I'm relaxed and I am always amazed at how they can do something completely goofy and it just makes me forget that, okay, maybe I was working on this before I came outside. Um,
Mhm.
one of the things I used to love, I mean, I we used to have an apiary and we don't right now, but this is gonna sound crazy. I would love I actually had set up a table and chairs by the apiary, and I would just watch the bees fly because
Mm.
they actually communicate through dance, and it relaxed me. I would find I was smiling. The same with my chickens. I mean, they all have their own little unique personalities, and so it's for me personally, I mean, it's a way for me to be connecting with nature, I'm connecting with the animals. Like I said, they always make me laugh,
Mhm.
and I just feel lighter, and
Yep,
that's one of the things that really works for me, and
yep.
one thing I think this is on your list, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder here. I know that
It's okay.
I have a lot of clients that, for whatever reason, either can't have pets or don't want pets with,
Mhm,
the
mhm.
responsibility and whatnot, but they enjoy them.
Yes.
And I'm always encouraging them, find a way to connect with the animals. If
Right.
it's, I think you mentioned like going to a shelter and
Mhm.
volunteering or something like that. Even if you have friends that have animals,
Right.
spend some time with them or offer like, "Hey, I know you're working all day. Do you want me to go walk your dog?"
Yep, yep. Yep, I 100% agree, and it's so funny, Sarah, because nature and animals is, of course, also at the top of my list, and I love your story too of watching the bees because
Mhm.
even if you don't own a pet, or let's just say you don't know anyone really that you'd feel comfortable like, "Hey, can I walk your dog?" Um, Go out in nature and just watch the squirrels. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, that every morning I have this morning routine where I have my coffee and I do some meditation, and I usually always have the window at least cracked open. If it's warmer, it'll be fully open, but and I listen to the birds
Mhm.
in my morning meditation, and then when I'm done, I'm right by the window, and we have some 2 pretty good sized trees right outside my living room window, and I literally, like, I watch those squirrels play, like, talk about being silly and foolish. Oh my gosh, if you really start to watch squirrels play, it is so fun, and it literally, and I'm not talking about, like, I'm doing this for literally maybe 2 minutes
Mhm.
where I'll watch them, and it it just right? It can bring that, you watch the squirrels play, that's play, that can be play for you too.
Yep.
Um, so we're not ta it these things don't have to take a ton of time.
Right. Right. And I'm really happy you mentioned that idea of not taking a ton of time because that's one of the things I know we discussed in our last episode, and I hear this from clients where it's like, "Well, I don't have the time for that."
Mm.
And literally, if it takes 1 or 2 minutes, you have that time.
Yes, 100%. One that is on my list, is, you had mentioned in the, Stuart Brown's categories, the kinesthetic
Mhm.
person. This is definitely me in terms of, I get a lot of joy out of moving my body, and I wouldn't say that was always the case, um, but for quite a long time now, um I am doing like, for me, for example, I love Zumba,
Mhm.
and if I didn't get to do Zumba every week, I mean, that's probably one of my it's fun, and that's the first thing, it's fun for me. I know it's not
Mhm.
for everybody. And then the second thing is it probably reduces my stress more than anything else, that I'm doing, and, so I do that. I've, incorporated weight training every
Mhm.
week into my life, and especially at the age I'm at now, there's definitely, in my opinion, there's a real kinda logical reason for doing that, right? Because, you really do start to lose muscle at a certain age. So
Yes.
there's a practical reason for doing it. But I've gotten to the point now where I actually do enjoy it.
Mm.
Um, and so one thing that I would suggest to listeners is to find ways that feel good to you to move your body every day. And I know that's a big ask for some people, but this might literally mean, like, um, taking maybe you start with, like, 5 minutes in the morning where you just do some basic stretching,
Mhm.
and you take a moment maybe to feel gratitude for your body, for your ability to stretch, right? It could be something as simple as that, but, I feel fortunate that, like, even just talking about Zumba and weight training. There's another class I do at the Y called Yoga Sculpt. This is a shout out to my friend Lynn who teaches the class, but that class every Saturday has just it just brings me A, so much joy, but B, I feel my body changing and responding to this
Mhm.
very challenging class actually. Um that I just really wanted to put that out there to people.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I've it's interesting, like, I've always my gosh, since probably high school, been involved some way, shape, or form in weight training, mostly because I'm small. And
Mhm.
but now at this age, it's to keep my bone mass and strength.
Right. Right.
Um, and certainly that's a different mindset, but it's interesting that I had gotten a few years ago, a smartwatch, and I have really mixed feelings about stuff like that because I can personally become kind of obsessive and like, "Oh my gosh, have I
Mhm.
gotten all my steps in?" kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm.
And I will tell you, and I don't even know what this is the equivalent of. My watch is set at, like, 6,000 steps a day. I know that everyone talks about the 10,000. I have no idea how to change that goal on my watch,
Mhm,
and I don't
mhm.
really care. But it's very interesting because I I can do nothing, meaning, like, nothing intentional. I cannot go for a walk, I cannot go to the gym, and I will get those steps in.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that because I'm outside with my animals, and
Right.
I'm doing things in the yard, whether that's tending to the garden or, weeding my pollinator garden or cleaning the chicken coop or whatever it is. So, again, it's that active, mindset and moving your body, and one of the things to me that's always been important is music.
Yes.
And I've always I mean, since I was little, have been drawn to music. And one of the things that we love to do is go to shows, and I'm always
Mhm.
dancing. Like, it's
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that release and I will dance around the kitchen while I'm,
Yep. Yep.
cleaning up, but it's moving your body, I feel good, it's fun, and, do I want someone to necessarily see me and critique me? No, but that doesn't matter.
Right. That's not the point of the dancing in the kitchen.
Yes, exactly.
I love that, and also because I actually forgot to put this anywhere in my notes, but I'm so glad you mentioned music,
Mm.
because there are certain types of music for me that, like, if I'm in a kind of a blah mood, I'll get in my car and I'll just, put a station on Pandora that I know I like, and there are certain types of just kind of, like, music that automatically raise my mood,
Mhm.
and, again, does that take long? Nope. You could listen to a 2-minute song, um, and 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 it can be enough sometimes, right? To just even if it's just it might not be shifting you completely into this wonderful state of joy, but it can really uplift you. So I'm really glad you mentioned that.
I think one of the other things and, this kind of is related to that age piece again, where it's as as people age, and this is a very huge blanket statement, but I think it's easy for people to get stuck in their routine,
Yes.
especially, like, as we're younger, we are it talking about play, I mean, play is almost structured into our lives when we're younger,
Mhm.
and even through college, I mean, I think there's an
Yeah.
intentionality there. But I think once we are quote unquote responsible adults and we have a job and we have a family or whatnot, and those other responsibilities, it's very easy to kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I often find, and this is especially when I haven't actually had these conversations with clients in a while, but um I've had a few clients where they are kind of butting up against retirement and they don't have hobbies, they don't have interests.
Yep.
And then they question, well, why bother retiring? And, one of the things that my parents have always instilled in me is do things when you can, because there's going to come a time where you're not able to. So don't wait. Don't wait
Mhm.
until you retire when you have all this free time to travel. Do it now.
Right.
If you wanna go and have this experience, do it now while you
Yep.
can.
Yep.
And it's my best friend from college, like, one of the things and Kristen, this is your shout out, um, we have driven when we were in school, we drove cross country twice,
Mhm.
and we camped, and we had so many adventures, and I will tell
Yep.
you, I don't think there is a person on this earth that I don't laugh as hard and as much as
With
when I'm
her.
with her. Yes. And, we are actively making an effort and kind of a commitment to each other to continue to have adventures and to try new things.
I
And
love it.
and that's even how we're phrasing it. Like, now we're not just saying, "Hey, when are we getting together again?" It's, "When is our next adventure?"
Yeah.
And there's so much like, even talking about like, I got chills because
Mm,
it makes me happy, it's something to look forward to, and even if it's something that maybe we've done before, chances are there is gonna be an element to it that we are just cracking up, and we just it's like it takes a moment to get ourselves together so we can have a conversation again.
yes. Yes, I love that, and you know what, it's so funny this episode because, interestingly enough, same with me, twice, I have gone cross country and, camped along the way, and it is the most amazing kind of when I look back on my life, those are some of the most amazing memories
Yeah.
that I have without a doubt. So I hear you loud and clear. For me, travel is huge and, just trying something new,
Mhm.
right? And that's kinda getting back to what you were saying about the hobbies, try something new just for the fun of it. It's kinda what I was saying before, but with 0 expectation of how good you're going to get at something.
Yes.
Imagine trying something without caring, right?
Right.
Like, about that. Yeah.
And I think this is one thing I share with clients where I tell them to try make a list of things that without bias, without, constraints, and, like, say, for example, if think outside the box, "Oh, I wanna skydive," and or, "I've never tried skydiving." Now, I've never tried it, and I'm never gonna try it, because I'm all set with that.
Mhm.
But the point is to start thinking outside the box and
Right.
to try, to your point, trying things you've never done before because what you might stumble upon is, "Oh my god, I really like this, and this is
Right.
something that I might wanna pursue more." And,
Exactly.
I think it was a few years ago, it was oh, yeah, it was during COVID, actually, because I had expressed to my parents wanting to like, so my thinking was, "Okay, I know how to drive a car, I know how to drive a motorcycle, I know how to drive a boat, I don't know how to drive a plane. So,
Mm,
I wanna do flight lessons."
that's awesome.
And so for Christmas, I got a flight lesson.
Hmm.
And, I will tell you, the best part about it was during COVID. So, I there I enjoy flying, but I have not felt a sense of peace like I did
Wow.
that day because here I am up above the earth, and I am
Mm.
not part of the fear that we were experiencing then.
Yeah. Wow.
And
You're
it
really getting that 10,000-foot view.
oh, I was, and it was amazing, and I will say the biggest I would have pursued that, but
Mm,
it is such a commitment in terms of time, and at that time and even currently, I don't have the time to dedicate to it, but I was so grateful for that opportunity because I might have knowing excuse me, after I did more research, like, what was involved, I might not have even bothered doing that flight lesson because I
mm.
might have said, "Well, I know in the long term," and I mean, I don't
I see. Yeah.
but the fact that my parents got me that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I can't wait." And so I think it's pushing yourself to that place of not uncomfortableness to the point that you're dreading it, but
Mhm.
challenging yourself to say, "Well, you know what? I've never tried this. I might really like it."
Exactly. Oh, I love that, Sarah, and I did not know that about you,
Mhm,
about the flight lesson. I think I knew about the motorcycle and the boat,
mhm.
but that's really cool. And, if you're okay with it, before we wrap up here,
Yeah,
there's one idea, I think we've really, hopefully anyway, given some food for thought and some good ideas, right, for listeners to spark their own kind of desire, right, to really try to engage in some fun activities and play. I did think, there's one thing I wanted to mention that just kinda came to me when I was preparing, for this, and I might even make this into, one of the bonus episodes that we do, but I think there's a really valuable, exercise in taking some time to think back to when you were a child
Mhm.
or an adolescent, young adult, whatever, um, and, really reflect on what lit you up back then, right?
Mhm.
Like, what brought you some sense of play and joy? And uh, and then is there a way to bring that back in some capacity into your life now as an adult? And when I sat with that exercise, what immediately came up for me was roller skating.
Mm.
My sister and I loved to roller skate. Like, I remember being as young as, I think I was probably around 8 when I 7 or 8 when I first put on roller skates, and I roller skated throughout my that childhood, throughout my adolescence, um, and it just brought me a sense of fun and freedom, and again, getting back to the music too, good music, all of that, and I've made this commitment since doing the notes for this episode. I really wanna buy a pair of roller skates. Now I have not put on roller skates, oh my gosh, like, in decades,
Mhm.
literally, but I think it's something I wanna do, and I might ask my sister
Nice.
if she also wants to do that, and anyway, I think it's just it's an example of how you can really start to think about, "How do I bring play into my life? What lit
Yes.
you up as a child?" And go from there.
So I have to ask,
Mhm.
so did you start roller skating on the street?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the '70s, man. It was like we absolutely, roller skated in the street, and I wa you just made me think of something that, I think is pretty funny to share. Um, we grew up in a household where my parents were pretty laid back when it came to, um, oh, just rules. I mean, I'm not saying we ran amok, but, um, we had a bedroom upstairs with a hardwood floor, and my my parents used to, and it wasn't a huge room, but it was big enough where, my parents would allow us to roller skate in our bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes. So the bedroom, the road, and then when I got to be probably in junior high, there was a roller skating rink that opened up close to my school, and we would go there on the weekends. Yeah.
That's awesome. I ask because I started on the street too, and I had the
Mhm,
ones that
mhm.
you wore your sneakers, but they were like metal and they had the key and they had like the big red
Oh,
things.
yeah. Yep,
Yep.
yep. Well, Sarah, if you ever wanna try roller skating again, you've got a friend who will happily do that with you.
There you go, as long as I'm wearing a helmet, because I do hit my head a lot.
And yeah, helmet, and probably these days I'd wanna wear knee pads too because
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna fall, but
Oh,
well, Sarah, it's I think this has been a really good episode. I actually, this sounds a little cheesy, but I really did have fun,
I did too.
doing it with you. And, it's hard to believe, but in another month or so, we are actually getting ready to wrap up season 1. We
Yes.
have already been through almost a whole season. And, do you want to end today's episode with just mentioning kind of what's on the docket for the next month as we wrap up season 1?
Sure. So within that next month, we're going to have 2 more of our full episodes. The next one that we're going to be doing is on burnout. And then we're going to wrap it up with self-care. And of course, we'll do a couple bonus episodes in between there. But we figured that might be a nice way to wrap this season up. And then I don't think either one of us have decided what that kind of gap or downtime is going to look like or how long it'll be. But it certainly won't be months. So you guys aren't going to be left in the lurch. Um,
Correct. Right.
but we just want to give you a heads up to know that this is kind of the direction that we're headed, and especially given for those of you who aren't in New England, like this is the only time of the year, and we're still waiting because this has been a very frigid spring. We're still
Cold and
waiting.
rainy.
Yes, we are still waiting for summer, and
Mhm.
with Memorial Day weekend, that's our unofficial start.
Mhm.
So for those of you who don't live in a climate that has a lot of seasons, I mean, at least up here, I feel like we try to cram a lot into our summers.
Mhm.
And so, spending time with family and friends
Yeah.
and those, the fun stuff, the adventures. Um, so hopefully that also allows us to come back to you guys after that break refreshed and continuing to be full of life.
Absolutely. There's that balance, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for a great episode. Thank you, listeners, as always, for tuning in. And until next time, take good care.
Yes. Be well, everyone. Thanks again. If you want to share your thoughts or ideas with us, you can email us at therapyunpluggedpodcast@proton.me. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to Therapy Unplugged on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.